You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Kudlak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Kudlak. I'm one of the hosts of the show, and today, unfortunately, I will not be joined by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox. But I promise that we have an amazing guest lined up today, and it is National Volunteer Week, so I'm so excited to have this guest on. We're going to kind of dive more into volunteering and her role within the burn community. But first, let me give a quick shout out to today's podcast partner. And today's podcast is powered by Jensen Hughes. Since 1939, Jensen Hughes has been a global leader in fire protection engineering and safety solutions. Jensen Hughes combines expert knowledge, innovative strategies, and groundbreaking research to help clients protect lives, property, and reputations, making the world a safer, more resilient place. So we appreciate Jensen Hughes and all that they do to support the podcast and Phoenix Society. So without further ado, let me welcome today's guest. Today we are welcoming on Madeleine Carson. Madeleine is originally from Maryland, but has called St. Louis, Missouri, her home for the past 16 years. She is a clinically trained social worker and has been serving as the director of programs with Burns Recovered since 2019. Madeleine was drawn to the burn survivor community after learning about the existence of burn camps for pediatric burn survivors. Madeleine is a camp kid at heart, having attended and then worked at the same day camp in suburban Maryland for 14 consecutive summers. Madeleine is not a burn survivor herself, but she understands the healing power of being part of a community of people with shared lived experience. Since joining Burns Recovered in 2019, she has made it her mission to create open and compassionate spaces for burn survivors of all ages to gather and support one another, such as a week-long pediatric burn camp, weekend-long retreats for adult burn survivors and young adult burn survivors, and a weekend-long family camp. In her free time, Madeleine serves as the board president of the International Association of Burn Camps, IABC. She also enjoys baking bread, reading, lounging on the couch with her old dogs, Enzo and Tesla. And she is excited to watch the World Cup soccer this summer to attend a game in Kansas City for her 40th birthday. So thank you so much for joining us today, Madeleine.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I know I just talked for a while and read your bio, but I'd love just to kind of hear a little bit more about in your own words, how you got connected to the burn survivor community.
So I was at the tail end of a job that was not really meeting my needs anymore. And I found a posting about Burns Recovered and the opportunity to work oversee and then enhance their burn camp. And like I said in my bio, I was not aware of a burn camps, like camps targeted towards burn survivors. And but I just knew about the power of summer camp because I had experienced that. And I also knew about the power of people gathering in community with one another, just like my bio said, with similar life experiences. So I took a risk and I applied, and here I am. And I've been here since 2019, and I am thrilled every day I wake up. I love my job. I love the people that I work with. I think not a lot of people can say they have 80% job satisfaction on a daily basis, but this has just been an amazing community to become a part of. And yeah, I'm just super happy to be here.
No, that's amazing. And, obviously you love working in this community, but what kind of initially drew you in and especially in those, maybe that first year of working in the burn survivor community, what are some things you learned about it?
I think that it's going to sound so cliche, but the resilience. I mean, my first day of work at Burns Recovered was the day before the campers got to burn camp. And so
Oh my gosh.
I know, talk about being just thrown in. And I had no idea what to expect. And I quickly realized that these are kids. These are kids who had something awful happen to them. And through camp and through the community they built with Burns Recovered and Midwest Children's Burn Camp, they don't let it define them. And it was just, you could feel the power of camp and the power of people gathering together. And then you forgot that this was even a camp targeted to burn survivors, because they are kids with the same, social and emotional needs, the same, the same everything. And it was one of the best weeks of my life. Really hard, very challenging, but one of the best weeks of my life. And burn camp continues to be something that I look forward to every year.
I can totally relate to that. But what a wild first few days for you. I'm sure
Really?
What a whirl with camp, especially. I mean, any type of like conference event that you're putting on is a lot. And then let alone camp for you is, I can imagine, was a lot to take in, but good.
Absolutely.
Good things to take in. Well, I know I really wish Amber could have joined us today, because I know you and Amber got connected through kind of a unique way through Amber's employer and Burns Recovered. So can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about that connection? Because honestly, I don't know a ton about it either.
Sure. So Amber's employer has a huge nationwide conference every year, I guess. And this year the conference was in St. Louis, and someone on their community outreach team just looked for organizations that had kind of a similar mission as Amber's organization of safety and community building, and health and wellness, and found Burns Recovered. And that is how, so they were talking to our director of partnerships, and initially no one kind of knew that there was an extra layer of connection here, until Amber got brought into the email chain, if you will. And then it was just really, it's a small world. And I think it shows that these connections can be made in any setting at any time. And that's why it's important to respond to those partnerships, keep those partnerships going, because you really never know when you're going to meet someone who, with the same exact experience as your organization is designed to support. And so we started talking about the different ways that her organization could help. And Amber, being a burn survivor, could help direct the conversation, and like what supplies would be most helpful, because they were going to do a supply drive and then put some things together. And so eventually what we landed on was backpacks full of hydration and sun protection supplies. And so some of those are going to go to our family camp, and then also some of those are going to one of the hospitals that we partner with here. So when burn survivors are discharged, especially in the summertime when there's more risk of dehydration and the sunburns and things like that, they will have some of these supplies. And Amber's organization will be a part of that, and Burns Recovered will be a part of that as well. So
we'll just make sure we shout out the United Rentals, because that is I do want to make sure that they get credit, obviously, for their local support of Burns Recovered, and just that corporate responsibility of giving back and helping communities. And yeah, it's just, I mentioned this on the show before, but sometimes it feels like the burn survivor community can feel sometimes like small and so niche, and you don't always get those like connections in your local community of other survivors. But it's like, once you sometimes, like, even for me, like, I open up my eyes and I'm like, oh, is a burn survivor community here. Like there are more connections to this community than maybe like you sometimes think. So I just love how, what are the chances of you guys getting connected? And I remember Amber telling me about that, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, and she didn't know that was getting set up, and it's just really fun how it all came together.
I think it also demonstrates that if you think you don't know someone who has been burned or who has had that experience, you probably do. And it's not a universal experience by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something that a lot of people live with, and these people might not be as vocal about it or as it's just, I know that you'll edit this out, but it is like, most people probably know and love a burn survivor.
Well, so last week I was just at, as you know, the American Burn Association's annual meeting, and I was talking with one of my colleagues kind of about that idea of like, he didn't necessarily identify as a burn survivor until later in life, even though his injury happened when he was a teenager, I believe, or a young, child. And it's just kind of that idea of like, how many more like survivors are out there? But maybe it is, I feel like sometimes even with like the smaller burns, in quotes, if you're not watching, I did put those up, like those smaller burns, then sometimes people don't feel like they always fit in with the community. So then they don't identify with us. But like you said, it is so much larger than I think even I realize at times.
Yeah. We at Burns Are Covered, and when we are putting on our programs and when we are fielding questions from potential program participants, we get a lot of questions on like, does my burn count? Right? Am I burned enough? And it's for our organization, it is all about the experience that somebody went through. And so it might not be a significant TBSA, total body surface area, but if you were treated in the hospital and you have this experience of going through this healing process, and if it was painful or not, or if it was, has affected you emotionally or not, like you deserve to be here and you are part of the community. And so a lot of our recruiting conversations revolve around, people feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. It's like, but you are.
Well, and I'm sure you may experience this even more with, children and siblings of survivors, because maybe, a sibling isn't necessarily the one who had that physical injury, but maybe they witnessed the fire. Obviously, even if they weren't there, they still have their own emotional healing that they're going through, and how they identify too within. And there's no right or wrong answer. But it is just, and sometimes, that changes how you identify with the community too over time.
Indeed.
Well, I do want to switch gears a little bit because as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, it is National Volunteer Week, and we've already started talking about Burns Recovered, but Burns Recovered is being recognized as our Volunteer of the Month. So we talked about camps and some of the work you do at the hospital, but can you just tell us a little bit more about what Burns Recovered is and who you help and some of your programs and services?
Sure. Yeah. We are a nonprofit. We're based in St. Louis, Missouri, but we serve burn survivors and co-survivors all across the Midwestern region. So the entire state of Missouri, parts of Western Illinois, parts of Eastern Kansas, Iowa, Arkansas, Oklahoma. And we are a community of people with burns and also without burns that work together to build connections between burn survivors and the community in order to help reduce limitations, fear, and insecurity for a burn survivor or a co-survivor. And the way that we do that is, primarily through our recreational programs, such as our week-long overnight camp, Midwest Children's Burn Camp, our a weekend family camp, which, as you just mentioned, sometimes siblings and family members are equally as affected by a burn injury. We have weekend-long retreats for 18 to 21-year-olds, focusing on their specific needs as they transition from adolescence to young adulthood. And then for burn survivors 21 and up, where they can bring a loved one or a guest who is instrumental in their recovery. And so those are our community building programs to offer a space for people to gather together amongst people who have experienced something similar. And we also do social events and outings, holiday parties. We go to different amusement parks across the state. And we also provide peer support in the form of, bedside one-on-one support at some of the hospitals in the state. We have just become a SOAR partner, which we are really, really excited about. In terms of immediate assistance to burn survivors, we offer financial assistance for, to help families cope with any sort of income loss, any sort of huge transportation bills, emergency housing while someone is being treated. And then we can also help cover the cost of compression garments, which, as we know, are not always covered by insurance, even though they are very necessary to contributing to a positive recovery. And we also offer scholarships to help retrain anyone who maybe needs to find or develop a different skill set after a burn injury in case, they aren't able to do the job they did before. And then to our young burn survivors, we have a passion ship, which is named after one of our longtime volunteers, Jim Neff. And that is money that helps them just kind of engage in after-school activity, a hobby, karate, bowling, private soccer teams, just kind of anything that they want to pursue. We're there to support them.
It's amazing. To be honest, didn't even know Burns Recover did all those things. That's amazing. You literally do a little bit of everything, which is so cool. And what I think is really unique about Burns Recovered, especially, is like the continuum of I guess just programs from especially I'm a childhood survivor. So I imagine you have a ton of children survivors who go to, those camps, but then stay connected throughout their entire healing journey through adulthood, which I think is always, that's so great to hear. Cause sometimes I feel like it can be a little bit separated in the sense of there's children programming and then adult programming. So, it's amazing, how many different services you offer and for the entire family too.
We do try to bridge that gap that we're there from the initial burn up until, whenever they get old enough or just feel like that they...
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally get that. I mean, and the other thing is that, I think I deal with a lot was I kind of went through this phase where I was going to camp every summer and I was getting connected that way. And then I kind of got into my young adulthood. I wouldn't say I got disconnected from the community. It's just school, being on my own, that life transition of yes, I was a teenager, but literally into a young adult myself. And then that's when I wanted to reconnect and get back to the community, because I did have this period where I just wasn't, like I said, I wouldn't say I was disconnected, but I wasn't as involved. And so, for some that happens immediately. For some survivors, you may, we always say, we're here for you when you need us, because especially when you get further out from your injury, you may be 20 years out and then something triggering happens and you realize you need to go to a support group, or you want to find a way to give back, or, you're just transitioning to another stage of life and you realize and you need that community again.
Lots of our camp, this is our 30th summer of burn camp.
Wow.
And yes, lots of our camp, like our cabin counselors, our volunteer leadership staff were campers. And so we have a counselor and training program. We don't let them leave. If you see what I'm saying, we stay connected. We offer these leadership opportunities and support. So the Young Adult Retreat has been hugely instrumental in helping people stay connected once they age out of camp.
Yeah, no, I know. Like I said, I think that was a huge thing for me. And yeah, I will say, like, having the only reason I'm not as connected with the camp I went to anymore is because I moved away. So I'm 12 hours away from that camp now. But I will say I always loved seeing the counselors who were campers, and then even like the same, maybe they were, I started going when I was 4 years old. So I saw a lot of people, but even having those, like the folks who were like 10, maybe when I first started going, who were like, like the camp leadership team, is always like, so I don't know, rewarding to see.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned obviously that Burns Recovered is now a Phoenix SOAR partner, which we are also so excited about. But on top of that, and even with your camps, and it is National Volunteer Week, so I'd love to talk a little bit more just about, how volunteers are part of Burns Recovered.
Volunteers make Burns Recovered's programming possible. Burns Recovered has a full-time staff of 3 people. And 3 people alone cannot run all of the programs that we offer. And so our camps, our peer supporters are all volunteers. They're all people who give up time and energy to support our mission. And we quite literally could not fulfill our mission without them. Volunteers are an integral part of our organization, and we appreciate them.
No, that's awesome. Well, and I know we've been talking about camps, so I do want to talk a little bit too about your role at the International Association of Burn Camps, the IABC. So tell us a little bit about your role there, and especially maybe how that intertwines with the camps you help run at Burns Recovered.
So the IABC is a nonprofit organization. We are a association of burn camps, but we have about 28 member camps from across the United States and Canada. I became connected to the IABC during the pandemic. My first camp that I was running solo was in 2020. And there was lots of questions about, do we put camp on? The IABC was meeting once a week virtually. And that was my introduction to this essential organization, because I didn't have anybody else that I could bounce these ideas off of, especially as a medical specialty camp. And so I became involved with the IABC, and I joined the board because I knew how important the organization was to me and to my development as a burn camp director, but then also as a leader within my organization. And then when the board director role became vacant, the outgoing board director asked if I would like to take on this role, and I said absolutely. And so I lead a volunteer board of 5 other representatives of different member camps. There's 6 of us, and we exist to amplify and then connect foundations and burn camps with each other. We offer networking opportunities. We offer professional development opportunities. We have a biannual workshop where our burn camps gather, and we talk about topics and trainings specific to the burn camp community, but then also specific to about camps in general. It is just a wonderful organization, an opportunity to connect with people who not only have the camp experience, but a camp for burn survivors. These burn survivors have different medical needs. Lots of times the burn is just one layer of things that these kids need support with. And so that can present some difficulty and something that you might not be able to get assistance with at a camp that's not for burn survivors. Mm-hmm. So I'm really, really grateful to the organization and honored to be able to lead it as its board president.
No, that's amazing. And I know we've talked a little bit about this before on the podcast, but I'd love to hear specifically from you about, yes, there are different needs of obviously a burn survivor camp than just your regular summer camp for kids. But we know, not obviously every burn camp is part of the IABC. Mm-hmm. So what, I guess, I don't want to know if they're rules or regulations or essentially, I guess what I'm asking is what would make a good burn camp, or what should parents and caregivers be looking out for? Obviously, going to the IABC and looking at the camps available mm-hmm. under your directory, but mm-hmm. What are things that parents and caregivers should be on the lookout for?
I think the first thing they should look for is whether the camp is accredited by an accrediting body, whether that is the American Camp Association, the Canadian Camp Association. Going through an accreditation process is very strenuous, and you have to meet a lot of standards of safety, staff training, program integrity. So that is one thing I would advise parents and caregivers to look for. The other is, does the camp have a mental health professional on staff, or is the mental health professional readily available? That is actually a requirement to be a part of the International Association of Burn Camps. You have to have someone with a mental health background, either on camp 24/7 or directly connected to the camp that can support at any time. So that is super, super important because, like I said, lots of times the burn is not the highest risk factor in a young person's experience. And then those are the two main things. Obviously, I would look at, how do you feel when the camp gets in touch with you? Are they responsive? How long have they been around? What is their, do they have a counselor in training program or leader in training program? Because part of their mission to keep people connected to the organization. Are they a member of the International Association of Burn Camps? I would definitely look at that as well. This is not to say that burn camps that are not part of the IABC do not put on great programs. I am not saying that at all. And there's just that extra layer of we look at these requirements and we agree to abide by them. Is the camp free? In order to be a member of the International Association of Burn Camps, you have to offer your programs for free or either have a very robust scholarship program. Because cost should never be a barrier to anyone who wants to access these resources. So that is what I would say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's kind of the same idea of having an ABA verified burn center. Of course, there are lots of burn centers that aren't ABA verified, but having that, personally, I always think of it well, someone else did the vetting for me. So it's yes, you should still do your research, but Absolutely. It's kind of a seal of approval from a reputable organization.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, and we will make sure we have both Burns Recovered and the IABC's website and directories all linked in our show notes. So if people are listening and want to get connected, I know camp time is right around the corner here, so they're all coming up very, very quickly. When is the Burns Recovered camp? Is that in the summer typically?
It is in the summer. It's usually the last week of July. So this year camp is July 26th to August 2nd. It's a Sunday to Sunday. It is a week long. Some of the members of the IABC have weekend long camps, 5 days, 6-day camps. Week long is one of the longest camp models.
Yeah. Yeah, when I went to camp, I think we did it was like Thursday through Sunday, so a little bit shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Like the counselors got there on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know the local camp by me now is a week long, and I'm just like, wow, these kids are getting so many more days than I used to get. I used to only get a
And still,
few.
at the end of every camp, we ask our campers about their experience and what's something they would change for next year. And most of them say make the camp 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't, with a volunteer workforce, I cannot make the camp 2 weeks, but I'm happy that you want to stay here for another week.
Yeah, no, that's always great. So obviously through the week long, I'm sure there's plenty of activities that you plan, but how do you really balance that, the fun parts of camp, the fun activities versus also the emotional healing that you're trying to, help take place?
That is such a good question. We first recognize that our camp is the limitations of what a week-long camp can do. We would never want to put a camper in a position where they disclose something or start to process something where they will need some support after camp, and because we don't want to put them on the bus and say, okay, see you next year. We have I believe we have a mental health professional on staff who reviews all of our campers' applications ahead of time, just to make sure that we are aware of what their needs are, what their burn history might be, if there's things we need to pay attention to, like fear of fire and things like that. We offer activity we offer Share Your Story. And I know that the Phoenix Society is familiar with that. I went to the World Burn Congress and attended Share Your Story, which was just amazing. And it is an optional activity. And you can go and you can share your story. You can go or you can and just listen. And that is one of the main opportunities that we give to begin that healing process. It's not therapy, and it is a model for kids to understand they own their story. They can decide how much they want to share. We also practice rehearse your response a little bit at Share Your Story. If somebody asks you questions, it is okay to say, I was burned 10 years ago. I'm doing fine now. Thank you for asking, or share a little bit more. We have a activity called Web Ceremony, which happens at the evening program. And so for the middle school and high school age kids, they have a piece of yarn and they will wrap it around their wrist and kind of say something about the week that has been impactful for them. And then they will pass that piece of yarn to somebody else until eventually everyone is connected with the piece of yarn. And so I think those are indirect ways that we help our burn survivors understand that they are part of a community of people who love them. Because we respect the ownership of someone's burn story, we do not require that campers share what happened to them. However, during cabin time, one of the first questions usually from one camper to another is, how did you get burned? And so those, our counselors are trained how to not start those conversations, but facilitate them if they happen. Because we want kids to be comfortable talking about what happened to them and hearing from others what happened to them. So I think the Web Ceremony and Share Your Story are two examples of the ways that we balance the fun part of camp with the recognition that these kids have gone through something hard, and we want to give a place for them to talk about it if they want to.
Yeah, we at my camp too, we had it was called we had the talking stick. So it was the last night, we'd have our pool party, and then we'd all sit around and have the talking stick, and you could obviously only talk if you were holding the stick.
Sure.
And we'd go around, and you could just pass it to the next person if you didn't want to talk. if you wanted to share your story, you could, or share whatever, I guess. It didn't just have to be about your injury. And then after, you know, all of that, those emotions, we would go get ready and have like our fun dance party to close out the weekend. So, and it's kind of like looking back, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, of like, you know, I went to camp for, I don't know, like 14 years as well or something like that. And I never felt like I was in, like, I go to therapy now, but like I never felt like I was at therapy at camp, or like I never felt like I was like being forced to like emotionally heal, if that makes sense. It was just like fun, and yes, there were like heavy moments, but nothing that was like, I don't know, it didn't feel like, as a kid, that I'm sure can be really hard to get them sometimes to talk about their emotions. And I look back and I like only have like the greatest, fondest memories of my time at camp.
Good. It happens without you knowing. It's sneaky, like emotional support. And so that is our goal. We want this to be a place of like positive memories.
Yep. I even think, you know, people always ask me like, what was like the most like helpful part of camp? And for me, it was always just like seeing, especially as a woman, like seeing adult female burn survivors who were like comfortable in a bathing suit, or like, you know, for the dance party, we'd always like do our hair and makeup, and like never.
That must be a universal camp thing, because we do that at camp too. People get dressed up.
And it was just like things like seeing others be so confident. I think just helped me like realize like I don't have to be like ashamed of my scars, or like I don't know. It's just like those little things, like just like going in the pool with a swimsuit on, showing off your scars was like so like eye-opening to me as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, what is your favorite camp activity? I know in your bio you described yourself as a camp kid at heart. So what are some of your favorite activities?
Oh man. We have a cake eating contest every year. The kitchen will make a sheet cake, and staff will either volunteer or be voluntold that they're in the cake eating contest. And that was my experience my first year at camp. We have nicknames at camp, and so my camp name is Mad Dog. And I don't know if it was because I was new or people wanted the reigning champion Pickle to lose, but I was in the cake eating contest and just like shoving cake into my mouth, and just remember hearing the campers chant, "Mad Dog, Mad Dog, Mad Dog." And I did not win, but it still was a super fun experience. I have not done it again because it was awful, but that is one of the highlights of the week. Just kids get so into it. The counselors get so into it. Most counselors just end up like smearing the cake on their face. And it's just another way to just act super silly and help kids feel comfortable being themselves. So that would probably be.
That's so funny. I'm just, have you seen the movie Matilda?
Oh yes, it was not
that's how I'm imagining you, just with a big chocolate cake.
I will say the year I did it was the first year that we were at the camp where we have now been since 2019. And so the camp kitchen wasn't really familiar with what we were doing. And so they made a really heavy sheet cake. And every year since then, they've made like an angel food cake.
Oh, smart.
Make it a bit lighter, but
a little lighter.
I had to be the one that's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. No, that's so fun. It was like, and again, last week at the annual meeting, we went out to dinner one night at because it was in Orlando, so it's like by all the parks and like all the fun activities, and there was one of those, I don't even know what they're called, it looks like a slingshot, like you're in this like ball and it just like slings you into the air. It's like an amusement like whatever.
I don't know what I've ever
And
done.
I did that at camp one year. I actually had the opportunity to go to Israel for a camp because the camp I was going to was in partnership with this new camp in Israel. So they were sending over, they were sending over like 3 campers from Israel every year. And then I was one of the first 2 campers from our camp to go over to Israel with our camp director, which, kind of thinking back at it, I can't believe my parents let me go because I was in 9th grade. And even like with technology, like I know it wasn't that long ago, but like trying to keep in touch with them when I was over there was so much different than it is today. But I did like the slingshot thing in Israel because I didn't really understand like what I was signing up for. And like I don't think I could ever do that. But at the time it was a lot of fun. But the photos are also quite hilarious of me and my friend's face because he was loving it. I was terrified. I'm not a big heights person either. So I again, if I would have known what I was signing up for, I don't think I would have said yes. But
isn't it amazing what you felt brave enough to do when you were younger that you would never do as an adult?
Well, now I'm also just like, I would vomit everywhere if I did that today.
Yeah.
But that was always fun. But yeah, it is true. Like all those things. And like when I kind of have some of that like group think mentality. I'm like, oh, well, no one else is saying no. So I can't be the only one that doesn't do the ride. But I do like the cake eating contest. That's a fun idea. And I don't want to be signed up for it though. I'm not even that big of a cake fan.
Another thing I really enjoy about the week is our evening. We have a different evening program every night. And during the day, the campers are split up into age groups, according elementary, middle, and high school. At our evening program, everyone just gets together, and sometimes it's controlled chaos. Sometimes it's a very regimented program, but it's just really nice to see the older campers interacting with the younger campers, and the older campers kind of starting to demonstrate some of those leadership skills, taking on a bit more responsibility because they know that they are role models to the next generation. So
yeah, how does your I guess for like the counselors, for some of those campers who like, do you have a counselor in training program, or like
we do.
What does that okay, yeah, can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Of course. When you are entering your senior year of high school, that is your age out year. So that's the last year that you'll be a camper. And next year, you're invited to come back as a counselor in training, or a CIT. You go through the same exact application and interview process as a brand new volunteer. So you fill out an application, you have to do a background check, you do an interview, you do references. And so that for some of the counselors in training, that is their first exposure to a job application. So already they're getting some life skills and life lessons. And then when they have to participate in training along with all of the other counselors, you are a CIT for 3 years, so 18, 19, and 20. And when you're at camp, you're assigned to a cabin in the age group and assume a lot of responsibilities of the counselors, but just a little less, most of the responsibilities of a counselor, but with a lot of support from the CIT coordinator, who's a member of the camp leadership team. They help to plan one of our evening programs. They run the CIT store. It was because of a lot of support from community organizations. We receive a lot of in-kind donations in terms of bucket hats and water bottles and sweatshirts and things like that. And so they are in charge of organizing those and handing them out to each camper. And then every year their responsibility at camp increases until they come back as new volunteers at 21. And then they hopefully keep coming back and become members of the camp leadership team. So.
No, I'm sure that's so rewarding seeing like the progression, or like just seeing campers grow up and then come back as adults and helping.
Absolutely.
Well, I know We are coming up on our time here, but I did want to make sure, not only for camp, but for also Burns Recovered. I know you mentioned kind of all the different areas you serve, but for our listeners who, whether they want to come to camp or they want to volunteer or help support, or, other, even orgs like United Rentals, like we mentioned at the beginning, who want to support, how can they all do that?
They can visit our website, www.brsg.org, which I know will be also in the notes. And there is a section of our website where you can submit an inquiry about volunteering or becoming a sponsor. And our director of partnerships will get in touch with you. If you're interested in any of our recreational programs, we have our adult retreat coming up in June in Columbia, Missouri. So if you're an adult burn survivor listening to this and are interested in learning more about that, there's also information on our website. You can also email me directly. I'm sure that my contact information will be somewhere on this. We're in our third year of our adult retreat, and it has been absolutely amazing. A really great opportunity for adults to gather together and, support one another. It is a combination of learning from professionals and just having really informal conversations with each other about topics that adults want to talk about. All of our recreational program information is on our website. We kind of have rolling deadlines. We have one event every season, and we rely on the generosity of volunteers. And so if you're interested in volunteering, if you cannot commit to a weekend or week-long program, we have different fundraising events throughout the year that we staff with volunteers. And so that is another way that we engage our volunteers and are also very grateful to them.
No, that's great. I know like my local camp too has like day volunteers, which I always think is helpful. But yeah, like however you can support, and if you want to support, like you said, we'll make sure we have your website, the volunteer form below. We'll have your contact information, so folks can definitely reach out if they want to learn more.
Yes, we can't wait to hear from you.
Well, hopefully, especially with National Volunteer Week, we can help get some more volunteers to Burns Recovered. So
yeah.
Like I said, we always do ask our guests 2 final quick questions. So I'm going to ask Amber's first.
Okay.
Amber's question is, if this season of your life had a soundtrack or a song, what would it sound like or be? I know she asked the deep questions on the show.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is my answer. I just go with my gut instinct. I play the piano, and I've recently reteaching myself how to play one of Chopin's nocturnes, and that has been stuck in my head for days, but it is so beautiful, and it has an undercurrent of renewal and sweetness and just really positive emotional association. And so I think that, it's spring. We are going through some changes, but it is, we're renewing our commitment to the organization, to the programs that we're offering. And so it's not a cool answer, but yes, one of the nocturne piano pieces by Chopin.
I think it is a very cool and very unique answer, and I love it. And I know Amber will too. I'm sure she's going to be sad that she missed that one. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I promise my question's a lot easier. So our final question, it is our Phoenix partner question, today sponsored by Jensen Hughes. So their question is, what's one message you hope sticks with our listeners today?
It's not easy either.
I lied. I guess I thought it would be the easier one. Normally after that Amber question, mine's like, oh, that one's a little easier.
Yeah. I think I would go back to the connection that we made with Amber. Those connections are there. as community members are there, and sometimes they're just waiting to make that connection, and you just have to, you can't be passive in building those connections, have to be active in it. And that is how you become part of a community of people who love and care for burn survivors, like the Phoenix Society and Burns Recovered.
Definitely. Well, Madeleine, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we had to go back and forth scheduling some, so I just appreciate your flexibility. I loved having you on the show.
Thank you.
And I know you are a busy woman. After you listed all your programs and everything you're doing, I was like, oh my goodness, you have to be very, very busy.
It's a good busy. It's a good busy.
Definitely. I totally agree. Well, thank you again, Madeleine, and I hope we'll be in touch again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Girls with Grafts. If you are enjoying this content, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.